That cold evening, no one expected a rusty metal door to change a life. What started as just another abandoned container became a story the whole town tried to explain, and few had the courage to tell. Before we begin, subscribe and turn on the bell. Here we show that behind locked doors and forgotten boxes, there are still human hearts. Elena gripped the steering wheel of her old sedan, the engine ticking like a weary heartbeat as she pulled into the lot of Sunset Storage. The sun hung low over the jagged roofs of the industrial park, painting the chain-link fence in bruised oranges and purples. Distant traffic hummed on the highway, a constant reminder of the world rushing past while she stood still. The air through the cracked window carried the scent of warm asphalt and faint oil, mixed with the dust that always seemed to settle in her lungs these days. She was 38, a single mom with calluses on her hands from too many shifts at the diner, and eyes shadowed by nights spent staring at the ceiling. Her husband, Marco, had been gone 2 years now. Car accident on a rain-slicked road, the kind of sudden loss that left you hollowed out. Their daughter, Sophia, was 10, all gangly limbs and questions Elena couldn't always answer. The mortgage payments had piled up like unspoken regrets, and the latest notice from the bank sat crumpled in her glove compartment. This storage unit auction? It was her Hail Mary. Her last scrap of savings, $800 she'd scraped together from tips and a garage sale of Marco's tools. Friends had warned her, storage hunts were for dreamers, not survivors. But Elena needed a win, something to prove she could still pull her family through the dark. The lot was half empty, a scattering of pickups and sedans belonging to the usual crowd, retired folks with time on their hands, young guys chasing quick flips. The auctioneer, a burly man named Hank with a clipboard and a voice like gravel, waved her over from the office door. Fluorescent lights buzzed to life overhead, casting harsh shadows on the rows of metal doors, some dented, others chained shut like forgotten secrets. The air grew cooler as the sun dipped, but the pavement still radiated heat, warming the soles of her worn sneakers. "First-timer?" Hank asked, eyeing her with the casual appraisal of someone who'd seen too many desperate bids. Elena nodded, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Yeah. Unit 47. Heard it when abandoned 6 months back." Hank grunted, flipping through his papers. "Owner skipped town, rent unpaid. Looks like junk from the preview. Boxes, some machinery. You know the rules. As is, no refunds. Open it blind if you win." She swallowed the knot in her throat. Blind. That's how life felt lately. The bidding started slow, a murmur among the 10 or so gathered under the awning. Elena's heart pounded as numbers climbed. $200, $300. She raised her paddle at $450, her palms slick with sweat. A retired couple in the corner pushed to $600, their faces etched with the same quiet hope she felt. But Elena thought of Sophia's backpack, frayed at the straps, and the empty fridge at home. She bid $750. Silence stretched, broken only by the distant rumble of a semi on the highway. "Sold to the lady in the blue shirt," Hank called. The words landed like a stone in still water. Eleanor's legs felt unsteady as she handed over the cash. The bills crisped from the ATM, now gone forever. Hank gave her the key and a waiver, his eyes softening just a fraction. "Doors down the end, Rosie. Lock it up tight if you need time to clear it out." She walked the length of the facility alone, the gravel crunching underfoot. The metal doors loomed like silent sentinels, numbers faded from weather and neglect. Unit 47 was at the far end, tucked in a shadowed corner where the lights didn't quite reach. Rust flaked at the edges of the door, and a heavy padlock hung open, waiting. Elena's fingers trembled as she inserted the key, the metal scraping with a low groan that echoed in the empty corridor. She paused, hand on the handle, the weight of the moment pressing down. What if it was nothing? Just more trash to haul away, another failure to explain to Sophia. The door rolled up with a reluctant screech, revealing a dim interior lit only by the fading daylight. Stacks of cardboard boxes lined one wall, taped shut and labeled in faded marker. Tools, maybe, or clothes. A tarp-covered mound took up the center, bulky and irregular, but it was the far corner that stopped her breath. A giant metal sphere, easily 6 feet across, squatting like an oversized cannonball under a layer of dust. It gleamed dully through the grime, seamless and industrial, with faint weld lines running like veins. Pipes snaked from its base to a cluster of rusted valves and gauges on the floor, connected to what looked like an old compressor. The air inside carried a metallic tang, mixed with the musty scent of disuse, like something left to moulder in a forgotten workshop. Elena's pulse quickened. This wasn't household junk. It felt deliberate, engineered. Her mind raced. What could it be? A water tank? Some kind of reactor from a defunct factory? The previous owner, whoever they were, had hidden something here, something that didn't belong in a $750 gamble. She stepped inside, the concrete cool under her shoes, and brushed a hand over the sphere's surface. It was cold, unyielding, humming faintly as if alive with residual energy. A chill ran up her arm, not from the temperature, but from the sudden certainty that this unit held more than she was prepared for. She backed out quickly, heart hammering, and relocked the door with shaking hands. The sun had set now, leaving the lot bathed in the sodium glow of security lights. Elena drove home in the gathering dusk, the highway lights blurring through unshed tears. Sophia would be with the neighbor, waiting for dinner and stories. But tonight, Elena's thoughts were consumed by that sphere, its weight, its mystery. Was it a treasure, some forgotten prototype worth a fortune, or trouble, the kind that came with questions she couldn't answer? Bills waited on the kitchen table, Sophia's drawing of a family of 3 taped to the fridge, Marco's empty chair at the table. She poured a glass of water, hands still unsteady, and sat in the dim light of the living room, imagining the possibilities. Junk or jackpot, salvation or snare. Sleep came fitfully, the scrape of that lock echoing in her dreams, pulling her toward a door she wasn't sure she wanted to open again. The morning light filtered through the thin curtains of Eleanor's apartment, casting long shadows across the cluttered kitchen table. She hadn't slept more than a few hours, her mind replaying the glint of that sphere in the dim unit, its cold surface under her fingertips like a promise or a warning. Sophia was already up, humming softly as she colored at the counter, her small feet swinging from the stool. "Mommy, you look tired. Did the auction go okay?" Elena forced a smile, ruffling her daughter's hair. "It went fine, Mija. Just a lot to sort out." She poured cereal into a bowl, the routine grounding her amid the swirl of doubts. The bank notice stared up from the table, red ink accusing. $800 gone. What if it was all for nothing? But the sphere nagged at her, an enigma that felt too deliberate to be junk. By the time she dropped Sophia at school, the decision had solidified. She had to go back, see it in the full light of day. No more half-glances. The drive to Sunset Storage felt longer under the pale sun, the highway flanked by strip malls and fading billboards. Elena's sedan rattled over potholes, the air conditioner wheezing against the rising heat. She parked in the same spot as yesterday, the lot quieter now, just a maintenance truck idling near the office. The chain-link fence rattled faintly in the breeze, carrying the scent of dry earth and distant rain. Fluorescent lights hummed from the open office door, where Hank was nursing a coffee, his broad frame silhouetted against the buzz. "Morning," he called as she approached, wiping his hands on a rag. "Come to haul your prize?" Elena nodded, her throat tight. "Yeah, Unit 47. Mind if I borrow a flashlight? It's pretty dim in there." Hank eyed her for a moment, then rummaged in a drawer. "Sure thing. Holler if you need a hand. Sometimes these old units have surprises." He handed her the light, his gaze lingering with a mix of curiosity and caution. "Just remember, anything sketchy, you call it in. We don't want trouble here." She thanked him and walked the corridor alone, the concrete echoing her footsteps. The metal doors seemed more imposing in daylight, their surfaces scarred by years of locks and levers. Unit 47 waited at the end, the padlock glinting innocently. Elena's hand hesitated on the key, the metal warm from the sun. Memories flooded her. Marco's steady grip when they'd fixed the garage door together, his laugh cutting through the frustration. Now it was just her, turning the key with a scrape that set her teeth on edge. The door rolled up smoothly this time, flooding the space with morning light that danced off dust motes like tiny sparks. The unit unfolded before her, no longer shrouded in twilight mystery. The cardboard boxes along the wall were stacked neatly, labels in precise block letters. Valves, assorted, gauges, calibrated, manuals. Not clothes or furniture, but parts. Industrial, technical. The tarp in the center covered what looked like a workbench, tools scattered atop it. Wrenches, pliers, a soldering iron caked in residue. But the sphere dominated, squatting in the corner like a sentinel from another world. 6 feet of seamless steel, its surface etched with faint inscriptions. Serial numbers, perhaps, or warnings in etched script. Pipes protruded from its base, coiled like veins to a control panel nearby. Dials frozen at 0, wires frayed but intact. Elena stepped inside, the air cooler and thicker, laced with the sharp tang of metal and something acrid, like burnt wiring. She flicked on the flashlight, sweeping it over the sphere. No door, no seam she could see, just smooth alloy. Humming faintly when she pressed her ear close, a vibration that traveled up her spine. What was it? A pressure vessel? Some kind of containment from a lab or factory? Her mind spun to wild possibilities. Government surplus, a prototype engine, even something hazardous. She circled it slowly, sneakers scuffing the concrete, heart pounding in the quiet. The smell grew stronger near the pipes. Ozone, like after a storm, mixed with rust. Kneeling, she examined the control panel. A small hatch caught her eye, latched but not locked. Her fingers trembled as she unfastened it, revealing a cluster of switches and a faded label. Sphere Containment Unit, Model 7B, do not operate without clearance. Below it, a logbook, its pages yellowed and dog-eared. Elena flipped it open, the spine cracking like old bones. Entries in neat handwriting, dates from 6 months ago, notes on pressure tests successful, containment stable at 200 psi, signed Dr. Elias Thorne. A scientist? An engineer? The last entry was abrupt. Final calibration complete, delivery pending, personal note, can't do this anymore. No more pages, just a blank space that felt like a scream. A shadow fell across the doorway, and Elena startled, dropping the logbook. Hank stood there, arms crossed, his face creased with concern. "Heard you moving around. Everything all right? That thing looks off." She stood, brushing dust from her jeans, pulse racing. "I don't know, it's not junk. There's this sphere, metal, sealed, and papers, like it was some kind of project." Hank stepped inside, whistling low as he eyed the sphere. "I've seen a lot in these units, but this reminds me of stuff from the old chem plant down the road, before it shut. Thorne. Rings a bell. Guy who worked there went missing last year. Wife said he was under a lot of stress, buried in some secret project." He scratched his chin, the rasp of stubble loud in the hush. "You thinking of cracking it open?" Elena's gaze returned to the sphere, its surface reflecting her wide eyes. Fear coiled in her gut, not just of what was inside, but of the life it hinted at, unfinished and abandoned. Stolen tech, a dangerous experiment, or just a man's breaking point left for someone else to inherit? She thought of Sophia, waiting after school. Oblivious to the shadows Elena was wading into, Not yet, she murmured, voice barely above the hum. I need to know more first. Hank nodded, not pushing. Smart. I'll grab you some gloves and a pry bar if you want to poke around the boxes. But listen, if it's hot, call the cops. Better safe than sorry. He lingered a moment, his presence a quiet anchor in the metallic chill. Before heading back to his truck, alone again, Eleanor picked up the logbook, tucking it under her arm. The unit felt smaller now, the sphere's weight pressing in. She relocked the door with a decisive click, the sound echoing like a choice made. Driving home, the sun climbed higher, but the chill lingered in her bones. Questions swirled. Who was Thorne? What had he hidden in that steel heart? And what would opening it cost her? The fragile peace she'd clawed for, or the chance at something real? Sophia's laughter on the radio couldn't drown it out. This wasn't just a gamble anymore. It was a door cracking open to truths she might not survive unscathed. Elena sat at the scarred wooden table in her kitchen that afternoon, the logbook spread open before her like a forbidden map. Sophia was napping in the next room, the soft rhythm of her breathing a fragile counterpoint to the storm in Elena's mind. Sunlight slanted through the blinds, catching motes of dust that danced like unsettled thoughts. The pages smelled of aged paper and faint ink, the handwriting precise yet increasingly erratic toward the end. Dr. Elias Thorne, Hank's words echoed, a man from the chem plant, vanished under stress. Elena traced a finger over the entries, her nail catching on a smudged date. Containment integrity at 98%, anomalous readings in core sample, monitor for leaks. What core? What leaks? The sphere loomed in her imagination, its hum a phantom vibration against her palm. She couldn't shake the chill from the unit, the way the air had thickened around that steel bulk. It wasn't just curiosity now. It was a pull, like the gravity of Marco's absence, drawing her towards something she couldn't name. But fear gnawed at the edges. What if Thorne had left it because it was dangerous, stolen from the plant, evidence of some corporate cover-up? Elena glanced at the phone on the wall, its cord coiled like a noose. One call to the police, and it could all vanish. The unit seized her $800 forfeit, questions about how a diner waitress ended up with industrial secrets. Or worse, if criminals were involved. Thorne's disappearance sudden, maybe not voluntary. She thought of Sophia's school play next week, the costume she'd promised to sew. No, she couldn't risk dragging shadows into their light, not yet. By evening, resolve hardened. She needed more before deciding. After tucking Sophia in with a story about brave explorers, ironic given her own uncharted path, Elena drove back to Sunset Storage under a sky bruised with twilight. The lot was empty save for Hank's truck, its headlights cutting through the gathering dusk. The chain-link fence whispered in the wind, carrying the scent of cooling asphalt and distant pine from the hills. Fluorescent bulbs buzzed to life along the corridors, casting elongated shadows that made the metal doors seem like jaws waiting to snap shut. Hank was locking up the office when she approached, his face lighting with surprise. "Back already? Thought you'd sit on it overnight." "Couldn't," Elena admitted, hugging the logbook to her chest. "The notes, they're about the sphere, tests, pressures. I need to see what's in those boxes. Help me understand?" He rubbed his neck, eyes flicking to the far row. "All right, but we do this careful. I've got a crowbar and some lights. If it smells like trouble, we stop." His voice held a gruff steadiness, the kind born from years of hauling other people's messes. Elena followed him down the corridor, the echo of their boots sinking with her pulse. Unit 47's door groaned open, the interior swallowing the harsh light like a secret shared reluctantly. The sphere squatted unchanged, its surface a dull mirror reflecting their wary faces. Hank handed her gloves, thick and worn, then pried at the first box with the crowbar. Wood splintered softly, revealing layers of foam padding cradling glass vials. Empty, labeled with codes. Sample A12. Neutralizer Batch 3. No liquids, just residue staining the bottoms. A faint crystalline shimmer. Chem stuff, Hank muttered, shining his flashlight. Plant used to make catalysts for fuels. Thorne was lead on R&D, heard rumors of a breakthrough, then poof, gone. Elena's stomach twisted as they moved to the next box. More vials, sealed this time, and notebooks filled with diagrams, schematics of the sphere, arrows marking inlet valves and containment field. One page caught her eye. A photo clipped inside, grainy but clear. Thorne, mid-40s, bespectacled and intense, standing beside the sphere in what looked like a lab coat, a forced smile on his face. Behind him, a whiteboard scrawled with equations and the word quantum stabilizer in red marker. "This isn't just storage," she whispered, the air growing heavier with the tang of old solder. "It's his work, hidden." Hank nodded, his brow furrowed as he tugged open a smaller crate. Inside, not tools, but circuit boards, delicate, etched with gold traces, some snapped like brittle bones. A bundle of wires spilled out, connected to a handheld device that resembled a Geiger counter, its needle stuck at a low hum. He flicked it on experimentally. It crackled faintly, then steadied. "Radiation. Low, but... yeah, this could be hot. Legally, I mean. Patents, theft, could be why he ditched it." Fear bloomed cold in Elena's chest, spreading like ink in water. She imagined sirens in the night, cops swarming the unit, Sophia waking to strangers at the door, or worse, if Thorne's bosses were watching, if this was why he ran. "What if it's dangerous? For real? Leaks? Explosions?" Her voice cracked, hands clenching the gloves. The sphere seemed to watch them. Its welds glinting under the light, humming louder now, or maybe just her imagination amplifying the quiet tension. "Easy," Hank said, placing a hand on her shoulder, firm, reassuring, like an uncle she'd never had. "We've opened the surface stuff. No boom yet. But you're right to worry. Thorne's wife, Lila, I think, lives local. Used to come by, asking if he'd paid up, said he was obsessed, working off books on something big, promised it would fix their debts, then he just stopped coming home." He paused, the buzz of the lights filling the silence. "Moral of it, don't rush. Document what you find, snap photos. If it's legit salvage, you might claim it fair. But call authorities if it feels criminal. Better to lose the gamble than your freedom." Elena nodded, throat tight. As they sealed the boxes back, the scrape of wood echoing her resolve. The sphere remained untouched, a sealed heart pulsing with unknowns. Outside, the night air cooled her flush skin, stars pricking the velvet sky. Hank walked her to her car, his truck's engine rumbling to life beside her. "You ain't alone in this," he said through the open window. "Swing by tomorrow if you need. I've got your back." Driving home, the highway lights blurred into streaks, mirroring the whirlwind in her mind. Compassion warred with caution. Thorne's desperation mirrored her own, a man who'd poured his soul into steel only to abandon it. Was the sphere his redemption or ruin? Elena gripped the wheel, the logbook on the passenger seat a weighty companion. For Sophia's sake, she'd uncover the truth, step by careful step. But as the apartment lights came into view, a deeper fear settled. What if opening it shattered more than just metal? Comment where you're watching from. I want to know how far these stories of courage and forgotten places can travel. The days blurred into a tense rhythm after that evening in the unit. Elena's life splitting between the diner's grease-slick counters and the shadowed pull of Unit 47. Morning started with Sophia's chatter over breakfast, her daughter's small hand slipping into hers as they walked to the bus stop, the autumn leaves crunching underfoot like fragile promises. But by midday, Elena's thoughts drifted back to the storage lot. The chain-link fence a barrier she both dreaded and craved, The sphere haunted her dreams, its seamless curve expanding into a void, swallowing Marco's laughter, Sophia's future. She hadn't told anyone beyond Hank, not even her sister across town, who would only lecture about risks and stability. This was hers to unravel, a thread of hope tangled in fear. On the fourth day, a Thursday heavy with overcast skies, Elena arrived at Sunset Storage just after lunch. The air hung thick with the scent of impending rain, damp earth mingling with the perpetual rust and oil that clung to the place. Distant thunder rumbled like a warning, vibrating through the gravel as she parked. Hank was outside, pressure washing a section of fence, the spray hissing in rhythmic bursts. Water beaded on his shirt, darkening the fabric, and he shut off the hose when he saw her, wiping his brow with a forearm scarred from years of manual labor. "Figured you'd be back," he said, voice carrying over the fading echo. "Couldn't sleep either, huh?" Elena managed a tight smile, clutching her phone, its camera ready for documentation, as he'd suggested. The logbook. I read it all last night. Thorne mentions core integration in the final entries, like the sphere's not just a container, something about stabilizing energy fields. I don't even know what that means, but it sounds important. And wrong, leaving it like that. Hank nodded, slinging the hose over his shoulder. Sounds like the kind of project that eats a man alive. Come on, let's see if the rest tells us more. But we go slow. I've got a buddy at the old plant, retired engineer. Might call him later if it gets too deep. His presence steadied her, a quiet bulwark against the uncertainty, born not from pity, but from the shared weariness of lives scraped together. They entered the unit together, the door's screech muffled by the thickening clouds outside. Fluorescent light from the corridor spilled in, illuminating the sphere's bulk in stark relief. Its surface now seemed almost expectant, the faint etchings catching glints like hidden script. The opened boxes sat resealed along the wall, but Elena's gaze went to the tarp-covered mound in the center, untouched until now. It had seemed innocuous at first, just bulky shapes under canvas. But after the logbook's revelations, it felt like the next layer of thorns unraveling. Hank tugged the tarp free with a grunt, dust billowing in a grey cloud that stung their eyes and coated their throats. Beneath lay not a workbench, as she'd assumed, but a dismantled assembly, metal struts bolted to a base plate resembling the skeleton of a larger machine. At its heart, a cylindrical chamber, half the sphere's size, with porthole-like windows fogged by condensation. Wires snaked from it to a bank of batteries, their casings corroded, and a keyboard interface cracked across the middle. The air shifted, carrying a sharper ozone bite, as if the exposure stirred dormant electricity. "What the hell?" Hank trailed off, kneeling to peer through one of the portholes. His breath fogged the glass, and he recoiled slightly. Looks like some kind of reactor mock-up or a test chamber. Thorne was into experimental stuff. Heard he got blackballed for pushing boundaries too far. Elena's heart thudded as she snapped photos, the flash popping like distant gunfire in the confined space. She traced the struts, her fingers brushing cold alloy, and found a plaque bolted to the base, prototype stabilizer, E. Thorne 2022, property of Apex Dynamics. Apex, the chem plant's parent company, shuttered amid scandals of unsafe experiments years back. A chill seeped through her jacket, not from the damp air, but from the implications. Stolen prototype, corporate espionage. Thorne's notes had hinted at desperation. Funding cut. Can't let them bury it. Had he hidden this to protect it or to sabotage them? Emboldened by the find, they turned to the remaining boxes, the crowbar's scrape punctuating the silence. One yielded protective suits, bulky and yellowed, with hoods and gloves intact, but stiff from disuse. Another held data drives, thumb-sized and labeled with dates matching the logbook, alongside a stack of printouts, yellowed at the edges. Elena rifled through them, her pulse quickening at schematics, diagrams of the sphere interfacing with the chamber, arrows denoting energy flux and containment breach protocols. One page bore a red-stamped warning, classified, unauthorized access, punishable under federal law. Her stomach knotted. Federal. This wasn't local trouble. It was a web that could ensnare her completely. As rain began to patter on the metal roof above, a rhythmic drum that amplified the unit's isolation, Eleanor's mind raced to crossroads. Call the police now, hand it over, walk away clean but empty-handed. The $800 gone, Sophia's college fund a pipe dream, back to scraping by on diner tips. Or seal it up, pretend ignorance. Sell scraps on the sly for quick cash? Greed whispered, but Marco's memory, his honest hands fixing engines without shortcuts, silenced it. No, that path would hollow her further. The third option loomed largest. Dig deeper, contact Thorne's wife as Hank had mentioned, piece together the human side before unleashing authorities. But what if Lila knew nothing, or worse, implicated Elena in theft? Hank straightened from the chamber, his face grim under the harsh light. This ain't junk, Elena. It's someone's life work. Maybe a fortune in patents if it's legit. But if Apex is involved, they don't play nice. Sue first, ask later. Or worse, if Thorne took it, 'cause it was dangerous. He gestured to the suits. Those are hazmat gear, radiation, chemicals. Could be why he bolted. She met his eyes. The rain's tattoo growing insistent, mirroring her inner turmoil. I keep thinking of Sophia. If I call the cops, they take it all, and we're back to square one. But keeping it? That's not me. Thorne. He sounds like he was trapped, like I am now, hiding his truth to survive. Her voice wavered, hands trembling as she clutched a printout. The sphere's hum seemed to respond, a low vibration through the floor that set her teeth on edge. Find the whole story first, Hank advised, his tone even, like gravel under tires. Lila Thorne lives off Elm Street, widow now, I think. Lost him official-like, missing presumed dead after a year. Go talk to her, off record, see if she knows about the project. Document everything. Timestamps on those photos. If it's salvage, you got a claim. If not, you walk with your conscience intact. He paused, rain sluicing down the open door, pooling at their feet. I've seen folks lose more than money chasing shadows, but you've got grit. Use it right. Elena nodded, the decision crystallizing amid the downpour, a path of clarity over chaos. They secured the unit, the lock clicking with finality, and dashed to her car through sheets of rain that blurred the world to grays. Water streamed down the windshield, wipers thumping like her heartbeat. Hank waved from his truck, a silhouette of unexpected alliance. Driving home, the storm raging, Eleanor felt the weight shift, not lighter but purposeful. Thorne's abandoned creation wasn't just metal and mystery. It was a mirror to her own fractured edges. Tomorrow she'd seek Lila, chase the deeper truth. For the first time in years, fear felt laced with possibility, a quiet courage blooming in the deluge. But as lightning cracked the sky, illuminating the highway's endless ribbon, she wondered if some doors, once pried, revealed storms too fierce to weather alone. The rain had cleared by morning, leaving the world washed clean but sodden, puddles mirroring the grey sky like shattered windows. Elena drove through the outskirts of town, the wipers intermittent now, squeaking against the glass in a rhythm that matched her uneasy pulse. Elm Street was a quiet stretch of modest ranch houses, their lawns edged with overgrown shrubs and faded mailboxes, the kind of neighborhood where dreams settled into routine before fraying at the edges. She parked curbside at number 214, a single-story home with peeling blue paint and a front porch cluttered with potted plants gone leggy from neglect. The air carried the damp scent of wet leaves and distant wood smoke, a faint warmth against the chill that had lodged in her chest since the storm. She'd rehearsed her words on the drive, something simple, honest, A neighbor from the storage place found some of Elias's things, but as she approached the door, steps soft on the cracked walkway, doubt crept in. What right did she have to stir this widow's grief? Lila Thorne might slam the door, or worse, demand the unit's contents as her due. Elena's hand hovered over the bell, the brass cool under her thumb, before pressing it. A chime echoed inside, muffled footsteps following like a hesitant heartbeat. The door opened to a woman in her mid-40s, slender with tired eyes framed by dark hair, streaked prematurely grey. Lila's face held the quiet lines of someone who'd learned to carry absence, her cardigan draped loosely over jeans worn at the knees. "Yes?" she asked, voice soft but guarded, the scent of chamomile tea wafting from behind her. Elena swallowed, shifting the logbook under her arm like a shield. "Mrs. Thorne, I'm Elena Vasquez. I bought a storage unit at Sunset Storage. Your husband's name was on some papers inside. I didn't know what to do, so I thought—" Lila's eyes widened, color draining from her cheeks. She gripped the doorframe, knuckles whitening. "Elias, you found his unit? God, I thought it was gone for good. Come in, please." Her voice cracked on the invitation, and she stepped aside, the house enveloping Elena in a hush broken only by the tick of a wall clock. The living room was dim, curtains half drawn against the light, shelves lined with framed photos, Elias younger, beaming at graduations, holidays. A wedding shot where his arms circled Lila protectively. Dust motes swirled in the slanted sun, and the air held a faint mustiness, like memories left to fade. They sat at a kitchen table scarred by years of meals, mugs of tea steaming between them, Lila's hands trembling as she poured. "He rented that unit 6 months before he disappeared," she said, staring into her cup. "Wouldn't tell me why. Just said it was for work, something to keep safe. Apex had him on a project, experimental energy storage, they called it. The sphere. Was it there? That damn thing he obsessed over?" Elena nodded, sliding the logbook across the table. "Yeah, sealed with pipes and controls, notes about tests, containment. He signed them. Dr. Thorne." Lila flipped through the pages, her breath hitching at the familiar script. Tears welled but didn't fall. Instead, she traced a date, the paper crinkling softly. This was his life's work. Apex promised funding, but they cut corners, pushed him to stabilize volatile compounds in that sphere, quantum something for clean energy, but it was unstable, leaks in early tests, close calls with radiation spikes. Elias came home shaking some nights, skin itching from phantom burns. He said it could change everything, power the grid without waste, but the pressure. Board meetings, deadlines. He started sleeping in the garage, wiring prototypes until dawn. Elena's throat tightened, the steam from her tea blurring her vision. She saw Marco in the fragments, nights he'd tinkered with the car engine. Grease under his nails, chasing a fix for their leaking roof. Why hide it? The unit, I mean. Lila's gaze lifted, shadowed. He burned out. Last year, Apex shut the lab. Budget slashes. Scandals from old accidents. Elias thought they were burying his research to cover liabilities. He took the prototype home, then to storage, when neighbors complained about the hum. Said he'd go public, find independent backers, but one night he just left. A note. "Can't drag you into this. It's safer without me." No forwarding, no calls. Police said runaway debtor, case closed after months. I sold what I could to pay bills, but that unit, I couldn't face it. The words hung heavy, the clock's tick amplifying the silence. Elena's mind reeled, the sphere not a criminal cache, but a relic of ambition crushed by corporate indifference. Thorne's desperation mirrored her own, a man protecting his creation, his family, by vanishing into shadows. But danger lingered in Lila's account, the instability, the radiation. Opening it could release more than secrets. It could poison the air, invite lawsuits from Apex, or worse, draw scrutiny that unraveled Elena's fragile world. "I don't know what to do," Elena admitted, voice low. "It's valuable, maybe, but if it's hazardous, and legally, it's mine now, abandoned. Calling the police means losing it all. Questions about how I got it, pretending I saw nothing feels wrong, like stealing his story." Lila reached across, her hand cool over Elena's. He'd want it finished right, not for money, but truth. "There's a flash drive in his old desk, emails, prototypes, logs. Take it. If you open the sphere, do it safe, for him, for whatever's left of us." Elena left with the drive clutched in her pocket, the house's door clicking shut like a punctuation. The drive home blurred through rain-spattered streets, her thoughts a storm of empathy and dread. Thorne's tragedy reframed the unit, not theft, but a father's final stand against erasure. Yet the moral fork sharpened. Expose Apex's neglect, risk entanglement in their web, or claim salvage, turn the sphere into redemption for Sophia, but at the cost of Thorne's unburied ghost. By afternoon she met Hank at the storage lot, the sun breaking through clouds in hesitant shafts that gilded the metal doors. The air smelled of wet gravel and ozone, the chain-link fence dripping residual rain. Hank leaned against his truck, arms crossed, listening as she recounted Lila's words. The flash drive passed between them like contraband. "Sounds like a good man cornered," he said, rubbing his jaw, stubble rasping. "Apex has lawyers thicker than thieves, but if it's unstable you can't play hero alone. Get a pro to assess. My engineer buddy, no strings. Document, then decide. Return to Lila, auction patents clean or walk if it's poison." Elena's gaze drifted to Unit 47, the door a blank face under the buzzing light. Fear twisted with resolve. The sphere's hum called, promising answers laced with peril. For the first time she felt the pull of justice, not just survival. Thorne's unfinished path could be hers to honor or a trap to escape. As shadows lengthened, the choice loomed, heavy as the steel within. The afternoon sun slanted low over Sunset Storage, casting elongated shadows that stretched like fingers across the gravel lot. Elena stood beside Hank's truck, the flash drive, a small, insistent weight in her palm, its plastic casing warm from her grip. The air hummed with the residue of rain, damp earth mingling with the sharp tang of rust from the nearby doors. Distant traffic whispered on the highway, a lifeline to the ordinary world she felt slipping further away. Hank's engineer friend, Tom, pulled up in a battered van moments later, his face weathered like old leather, eyes sharp behind wire-rimmed glasses. A retired specialist from Apex's heyday, he'd agreed to a discreet look. No questions asked beyond what Elena could share. "Let's see this beast," Tom said, voice gravelly from years of lab commands, as they rolled up Unit 47's door. The screech echoed in the quiet corridor, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead like hesitant witnesses. The sphere loomed in the corner, unchanged, its seamless steel surface reflecting the intrusion in muted gleams. Pipes coiled from its base like dormant serpents, the control panel's dials frozen in silent testimony. Elena's pulse quickened, the space feeling smaller with 3 bodies inside, the metallic chill seeping through her thin jacket. Tom circled the sphere slowly, gloved hands tracing weld lines without touching, his breath steady, while Elena's came in shallow bursts. He unpacked a toolkit, multimeter, radiation detector, thermal scanner, tools that clicked and whirred like extensions of his cautious curiosity. Hank leaned against the wall, arms crossed, his presence a quiet anchor amid the rising tension. "Start with the basics," he murmured to Elena, who nodded. Though her mind raced to Lila's tear-streaked face, the weight of a marriage dissolved into unanswered questions. The detector beeped softly as Tom swept it over the sphere's exterior, its needle twitching but not spiking. Low residual, gamma traces, nothing acute, like a cooled reactor core but contained. He knelt by the pipe, sniffing the air, ozone and faint solder, the same acrid bite that had haunted Elena's nights. Thorne's work, all right. I knew him peripherally, brilliant but idealistic, pushed for green tech when the board wanted quick profits. His words hung in the dust-moted light, reframing the sphere from threat to tragedy. Elena handed him the flash drive, her fingers brushing his calloused ones. From his wife, emails, logs. Tom plugged it into a rugged laptop balanced on the tarp-covered assembly, the screen's glow casting blue shadows on their faces. Files bloomed open, schematics in crisp lines, videos of flickering tests where the sphere's interior pulsed with ethereal light, Elias's voice narrating in clipped tones, stabilization at 85%, potential for infinite yield without fallout. But deeper folders revealed the unraveling, emails from Apex execs, terse demands for results, threats of defunding. One chain, time-stamped months before his disappearance, showed Thorne pleading, "This isn't viable under current safety protocols. The core's volatility—" Tom paused the video, his jaw tightening. He was right to worry. The sphere's a quantum capacitor, stores energy in subatomic fields, revolutionary if stable, but Apex rushed it, cut testing phases. Thorne documented anomalies, micro-leaks causing neural interference in lab rats, headaches in handlers. He hid it here to expose them, not steal. Filed a whistleblower report anonymously, but they buried it. Stress broke him. Family man. Couldn't risk Lila or the kids. Elena's chest ached, the revelation settling like lead. She imagined Thorne in this very unit, sweat beading under the dim bulb, soldering wires by flashlight, his hands trembling not from cold, but from the moral fracture. The sphere wasn't a bomb or a fortune. It was his conscience forged in steel, abandoned when the world proved too unforgiving. Memories of Marco surfaced, his quiet integrity, refusing overtime that would have meant missing Sophia's birthdays. Thorne had chosen exile over complicity, leaving a puzzle for a stranger to solve. Compassion swelled, mingling with her fear. This truth demanded action, not evasion. As Tom scanned the thermal image, warm pockets inside the sphere, no breaches, Hank broke the silence. So, it's salvageable. Patents likely lapsed with his absence. You could license it clean, fund a future, but Apex might circle back, claim ownership. His eyes met hers, steady in the harsh light, offering not solutions, but solidarity. Elena stepped closer to the sphere, pressing her palm to its curve. The faint hum vibrated through her skin, alive with Thorne's unyielding hope. No danger immediate, but the deeper peril lay in inaction, letting corporate shadows erase another life, dooming Sophia to the same scraping survival. "We document it all," she said, voice firming against the echo. "Photos, scans, Lila's testimony. Then I contact a lawyer, pro bono, someone who fights for the little guy. If it's his legacy, we honor it. Open safely, test legit, maybe partner with a university. No shortcuts." Tom nodded approval, packing his gear with efficient snaps. "Smart. I'll vouch for the assessment. Off record for now." Rain from the morning lingered in puddles outside as they secured the unit. The lock's click, a vow sealed. Driving home through twilight, the highway's sodium lamps blurring like tears, Elena felt the arc bend toward clarity. Thorne's why, protection, defiance, mirrored her own guardianship of Sophia, transforming fear into fuel. The sphere waited, no longer a monster, but a bridge to redemption, if she crossed with courage. Yet, as apartment lights flickered into view, a quiet dread lingered. Truths unearthed could summon storms, testing if her resolve held against the gales. If this story already has your heart, hit the like button. It helps the story of Eleanor reach more people who still believe in second chances. The weeks following Tom's assessment unfolded like a slow thaw, the sharp edges of fear softening under the weight of deliberate steps. Eleanor's apartment, once a cramped refuge of unpaid bills and shadowed corners, began to breathe easier. The flash drive's contents, scanned, backed up, and shared with a pro bono lawyer from the local legal aid clinic, became the foundation of her claim. Maria Ruiz, the attorney, was a no-nonsense woman in her 50s, her office smelling of strong coffee and fresh printer ink, who saw the spark of injustice in Thorne's story and Elena's resolve. "Abandoned property with intellectual value," she'd said, tapping a manicured nail on the printouts. "Apex let the patents lapse when he vanished. If we prove it's salvage and his intent was exposure, you could negotiate licensing. But we move clean. No secrets." Eleanor nodded, her hands steady on the table for the first time in months. The fluorescent hum overhead a familiar echo of the storage unit. Sophia noticed the change, her daughter's eyes lighting up at the small shifts. A new backpack from the first check Elena deposited, groceries that filled the fridge without tallying every penny. "Mummy's fixing things," Sophia said one evening, crayon in hand, drawing a sphere not as a ball, but a glowing heart. Elena hugged her close, the scent of crayons and shampoo grounding her, Marco's absence a quiet ache rather than a void. Hank became more than a helper. He was the steady rhythm to her unfolding days, mornings at the diner, blurred into afternoons at Sunset Storage, where they'd catalogue the unit's contents under the pale winter sun. The chain-link fence rattled in the chill breeze, carrying the bite of frost and distant wood smoke from the hills. Hank's truck idled nearby, its engine a low rumble as he hauled boxes to a rented trailer, gloves smudged with grease. "You're doing right by him," he'd say, pausing to wipe sweat from his brow, his broad frame silhouetted against the rusted doors. No romance bloomed, just companionship, forged in shared silences and the scrape of tools on concrete. He'd share stories of his own losses, a divorce years back, a son estranged, reminding Elena that integrity wasn't solitary. The sphere, that enigmatic core, yielded its secrets cautiously. With Tom's guidance and a certified hazmat team, funded by the legal aid's initial grant, they breached it under strict protocols in a borrowed lab on the town's edge. The air in the facility hummed with sterile efficiency, beeps from monitors punctuating the tension, the scent of antiseptic sharp against the ozone tang of activation. No explosion, no poison cloud, just a soft whir as the inner chamber unsealed, revealing layered coils of alloy and crystal lattices, humming with stored energy that lit the room in an ethereal blue glow. "Stable," Tom confirmed, his voice reverent over the crackle of readings. "Thorne nailed it. Infinite storage without decay. Could power homes, cut emissions. He just needed time." The discovery reframed everything. Elena's moral crossroads resolved not in a blaze of drama, but in quiet documentation. Videos time-stamped, affidavits from Lila, who wept softly during her recorded testimony, her hands clasped around a photo of Elias. "He'd be proud," Lila whispered afterward, over chamomile tea in her dim kitchen, the clock ticking like a heartbeat renewed. The lawyer filed with the courts, arguing Eleanor's rightful ownership as finder of abandoned goods, with proceeds split to honor Thorne's estate. Apex surfaced, of course, slick suits in a conference room downtown, the air thick with polished leather and veiled threats. But Maria dismantled them, citing lapsed patents and Thorne's whistleblower logs, unearthed from the drive. "This isn't theft," she declared, her voice cutting through the murmur. "It's redemption." The settlement came in spring, a modest sum at first, $150,000 wired to Elena's account, enough to clear the mortgage, fund Sophia's school fees, and seed a small venture. She didn't chase riches. Instead, with Hank's practical know-how and Tom's technical eye, they formed a partnership. Thorn Legacy Labs, a non-profit workshop in an old garage near the storage lot. The Sphere's tech, licensed to ethical firms, powered pilot projects, solar backups for low-income homes, a quiet nod to Elias's vision. Elena learned the ropes, her calloused hands trading diner aprons for soldering irons, the buzz of fluorescent lights, now a companion to creation rather than dread. Sophia visited after school, her laughter echoing off the walls as she helped sort components, the space alive with possibility. Hank stayed on, his maintenance shifts at Sunset Storage dovetailing with lab tinkering, a bridge between the old grit and new hope. "Doors like that unit," he'd say over coffee in the break room, steam rising like morning mist. "They don't just open. They teach you how to walk through." Eleanor felt the evolution in her bones. From the trembling hand on the padlock to this steady grip on a wrench, fear yielding to clarity, exhaustion to quiet purpose. Months later, under a summer sunset painting the industrial roofs in gold, Eleanor returned to Unit 47 alone. The door stood ajar, the space stripped bare, boxes gone, sphere relocated, concrete swept clean of dust and echoes. The air carried the warm asphalt scent of endings, the chain-link fence humming faintly in the breeze. She lingered in the empty rectangle, sunlight slanting through like forgiveness, the faint scrape of her shoe the only sound. No treasure remained, just the monument of a choice, the courage to open not just metal, but the locked chambers of her own heart. In that hollow space, Elena smiled softly, tracing the doorframe where rust had flaked away. Some spheres once cracked released light enough to guide you home. Subscribe for more stories of compassion, justice, and redemption. Thank you for watching the case of the giant metal sphere. See you in the next one.